comic, I'm starting fires through poetry. The heart's out, staying loyal, no falling out. And if you step into the court, be ready, we ballin' out, yeah. I just gotta go hard. Go hard, go hard, go hard.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of iGaming Next Weekly News live. I'm joined today by Nico Jansen and Connor. How are you doing, both of you?
Fabulous. Thank you, Jake. Yes, it's a lovely sunny day here in London, as you can see from the fact my coffee is iced today. So keeping it fresh, keeping it cool. How are you?
I'm good. Nico, how are you? You're joining us from Munich today.
Yeah, as of now, I'm joining you from Munich. It's sunny here as well, so the sun is laughing over the Bavarian sky, and we're just looking forward to host all the crazy people during the Oktoberfest. So everybody prepare, get your beer skills a little bit, up and running, and then join us for the greatest celebrations a small village like Munich can provide on a yearly basis.
Have you got a spare room for me and Jake to come and join you there, Nico?
Always. Taking one for the team, babes.
I actually went on holiday in August, and the group of friends I was with decided to hire an inflatable German pub, Nico. So we had an Oktoberfest instead. So I've done it already this year. I'm all beard out, I'm afraid.
Oh, there you go. Speaking of beard, my God, what a tremendous display we're all making today, Jake. You look like a caveman. I love it.
Yes, thank you. What I will say, though, is what we're also hoping for today is to avoid any hacks or cybersecurity issues on stream or on our social media accounts or in the comments, which Bogdan and Elizabeth are doing their best to get rolling in today. So please do contribute to our discussion. We've got a special guest, which is always fantastic. They'll be joining us shortly to talk about today's main topic of the hacks that have impacted MGM Resorts and a few other operators recently. But before we jump into that, I must do two things. The first, of course, is to thank our sponsors today, In Place and Hub 88, as always. And the second is to intro Nico as he goes to take it away with 10 and 5.
Yeah. So first of all, to answer the question of Bogdan, as of now, so my flat is still getting renovated, so that's why it just looks a little bit messy. But the TV on the ground is just the TV attached to my rowing machine, so that's why my body is always in shape, keeping it slim. No, just kidding. But it's actually really attached to the rowing machine. But just getting things started. Australia government sets sights on credit card betting bans for the iGaming space as well. So Australia already has a ban on gambling with credit cards at land-based facilities. The new bill would now bring online gambling in the line with this, effectively placing a blanket ban on all credit card gambling and virtual money, which includes cryptocurrencies as well. Or, as Michelle Rowland, the MP, said, it is as simple as this. People should not be betting with money they do not have. The government remains committed to protecting Australians from gambling harms. We will see how this turns out, but as of now, I'm pretty sure this will lead to even more people enjoying the black markets as well. Then an update on Brazil as changes and challenges for Brazil's sports betting and online casino bill gets closer as of now, and I just want to keep it short to still stay within my 5 minutes of time. So the lower house yesterday agreed on the overall bill, which we already discussed. And now this bill is on its way to the Senate for further consideration. And the Senate has a 45-day window to provide feedback on this revised bill. Over 1.1 million people opened their sportsbook account during NFL Week of 1. Shout out once again to our friends from GeoComply, as they have figured out that over the course of the week, GeoComply processed over 242 million geolocations checks, which is a massive 56% uptick from 2022, which logged 103 million checks. So for each and everybody which is just surprised with this massive uptick, bear in mind that New York has not been part of last year's data already. Then one interesting story as well. Lottery.com regains NASDAQ compliance as they maintained a minimum price finally of $1 over the over 30 consecutive business days, which is a requirement as the minimum bid price. So we will probably see a comeback of Lottery.com within the NASDAQ. Then an interesting story as well, as the Seminole tribe, which we all know in Florida, finally cleared the path for a potential relaunch. The Seminole tribe of Florida scored another victory in its legal fight over offering sports betting in the Sunshine State of Florida, as on Monday, a federal appeals court denied a final last request from a pari mutual owners for a rehearing. And now we might see a comeback of hard rock sports betting by the 19th of September. Heading over to Chile. Chile accept border resolutions for new gambling regime. So the government of Chile has accepted resolutions for the launch of regulated online gambling proposed forward by the Chamber of Deputies Economic Commission. The 50 new articles define the online gambling activity to be licensed and those to be prohibited. So we will see sports betting and online gaming in Chile as well. Interesting story as well, as New York revenues falls below 100 million in August. Oh, don't start crying, because as we all know, August is the weakest US sports month all over sports, as there's no NHL, there's no NBA, there's no NFL. There are a couple of college games already, but the GGR fell below 100 million. I'm pretty sure each and everybody of us would be very worried if we would state the same for September, which is the golden start of NFL. And just three more, as FanDuel selects Amazon Web Service as its strategic cloud provider as well. And then another interesting story, as we might see a comeback of California and the gambling, as FanDuel obviously got in touch with tribes. FanDuel has been more amenable to reach out to a number of tribes, which is stated by Siva, who also serves as the chairman for the California Nations Indian Gaming Association. And she said, I've heard from a number of tribes that they've reached out. I haven't heard much from DraftKings, whether they reached out or not. So fingers crossed that we might see a comeback. And last but not least, Genius Sports signs a deal with Snapchat for NFL lenses. So Genius Sports is the official and exclusive distributor of the NFL official data and next-gen stats. And now they signed up with Snap as well to include their live data into Snapchat and to provide them with AR and real-time data for the lenses to make it even more immersive. And that have been my 5 and 10. The other way around, 10 and 5.
Smashing job, Nico. That was great this week.
Like 5 and 10. Good job, Nico. Nobody does it quite like you, mate.
Yeah, I was glued to my screen there, and great to see Katie and Liga as well in the chat. Katie said lots of new markets opening up. I love the way you say Chile, by the way, Nico. That's is that the correct pronunciation, Connor?
Chile. No, that's the Munich pronunciation of Chile.
Okay, well, I'm a big fan anyway. Right, moving on to our main talking point of this week. And if you've been on social media or been reading any of the gaming publications this week, you'll know that MGM Resorts has been impacted by a major cybersecurity breach. This, of course, comes a week after Stake, the online casino company, was hacked for more than 40 million worth of crypto, as Nico and Connor discussed on the live stream last week. And the FBI are investigating both cases, it is said. So plenty to discuss on this topic. And I think we should probably waste no more time and get our special guest on. So joining us now is Stefan Thelberg, who is the CEO and co-founder of Holm Security. Stefan joins us from Stockholm today. Hi, Stefan. How are you doing?
Hello, guys. Perfectly fine. Like the energy. So, yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you with us as well. Just before we dive in, do you want to give us a quick introduction and maybe a background of your company and what it does?
Sure, I'll try to do the brief version. So Holm Security is a company within the space of vulnerability management. We do something called next gen vulnerability management, but I'm not going to do the full story about next gen and what's unique with Holm Security today. I'm happy to take that in a offline sometime. Obviously, I'm the one of the founders, and I'm also the CEO at Holm Security. But we're a cybersecurity company, product SaaS company within the space of cybersecurity, and if you break it down, vulnerability management. So, in simple terms, what we do is that we help organizations to have a proactive approach against the cyber threats that they're facing, trying to find the vulnerabilities that they have before they are exposed and things happen like the things that now happen to MGM. Mm-hmm. So that's Great. The brief version.
Yeah, awesome, Stefan. Thank you. We've got a lot of unanswered questions, and we'll come back to you on those shortly. But just to add a bit more color to this story, so basically, reports first came out on Monday that MGM had basically had to shut down its computer systems after it identified a cybersecurity issue. And this led to a lot of disruption. It meant that kind of reservation systems, hotel check-in systems, key cards for hotel rooms, and even like the slot machines on casino game floors were basically out of action. And I think Elizabeth might have a couple of clips that we've got to show you now from a Las Vegas content creator called Jacob, who was basically on the ground this week.
This is the scene right now at the Bellagio on a Tuesday night after 7 p.m. at the check-in desk. So the MGM is still having to try to figure out the whole cybersecurity attack, get their system up. They got everyone working the front desk right now. They're giving out wine glasses, complimentary wine to people in line. They're also giving out water bottles. But just to show you guys what's going on right now, they have additional staff helping with lines, so they're definitely doing everything within their power to mitigate the situation. And shout out to all the employees, man, who had to come in the last couple of days to get this dropped on them. This is not something easy to deal with. The line has actually gotten shorter from what I saw on social media a few hours ago. But yeah, weeknight after 7 p.m., man. I don't know how long the wait is, but this is the situation right now. So here's the scene right now at MGM Properties. I'm at New York, and I came over here to see what's going on with the slots, because some of them, they look operational, but check this out. So with the slots, some of these look operational and they look like you can play, but you got to look right here. See how it says not in use? So this one here is clearly out of service, but if you see like this lightning one right here, it looks like you can play it. But if you come up here, it says out of service. So even machines that you are able to.
So there we go. That footage came courtesy of Jacob Orth, who is Jacob at Jacob's Vegas Life on Twitter. If you want to see some more videos of this disruption there. But Stefan, you told us just before we came on air that a lot of these these systems being closed down is probably a response from MGM to the initial threat that it discovered. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the spontaneous reaction looking at these things would be that, they got infected with some kind of malware, or they got hit by ransomware, and everything was, they had its major outage. But there's usually two sides to these attacks, right? One is the systems that are impacted directly, which is infected by some kind of malware. They get hit by the ransomware. Either they're locked down. Most likely, these systems, some of the systems were locked down. Some of the critical systems were locked down. That's the obvious side of the ransomware attacks. But you have the other side, which is obviously the side effect, which is that you most likely, to be able to do forensics, we do know that FBI has been a part of this. Also, to be able to do the forensics and to stop this from spreading further into their other systems, and also stuff like the things that are connected to these machines that so they have to shut them down, basically, do a hard shutdown. They basically unplug the systems from the networks, maybe even unplug the electricity, to be honest, just to make sure that they're not connected to anything. And that, of course, will hit them even harder, because that will then impact basically every corner of the operations of the business they have, because everything is run by computers today. So yeah, that's most likely what we see here.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned the forensics, and they said they're conducting their own investigation into what happened. But yeah, I mean, it affects everything, right? I mean, staff had to kind of take people's reservation details down with a pen and paper, and you couldn't buy anything in the bars or the restaurants unless you had cash on you. So it really does sort of affect right across the ecosystem. But if we sort of simplify things and go back to basics a little bit, what would you say are the most common types of kind of hacks or cybersecurity breaches for big businesses that they should be aware of?
Well, unfortunately, there is a wide range nowadays. So it's there's a few things to be concerned about, for sure, which is also obviously the challenge that you're facing is not one single thing. Back in days, you talked about malware and virus that you can get in your computer. But today, the reality and the threats that you're facing is way more complex and challenging. If you look at the most frequent, or the things that appear the most nowadays, it's not necessarily what we did see. We talked here about that there were some bitcoins that has been stolen from stake, I think it was, and that's I would call it a bit unusual hack. It's not the most common one, I would say. The more common one is these traffic attacks, DDoS attacks. I mean, that's most likely the most, let's say, the cheapest and easiest way to create outage, because basically anyone can do it, and you can buy it as a SaaS service if you like. Of course, these ransomware attacks is one of the major issues nowadays, even though we have seen a slight decrease in this the last years. Most likely because actually companies become a bit better to protect themselves against these threats, but it's still on a very high level. There's a huge number of ransomware attacks going on that we never hear about, and obviously in this case with MGM, they cannot avoid making it public. They're also public companies, so they need to announce it. But there's a lot of companies that don't tell anything about these things, but they're hit hard by these ransomware attacks. Phishing, of course, all these social engineering stuff that is going on. And more and more things are also moving into the cloud, and that creates a lot of challenges. I always say that technology comes before security, and moving stuff into cloud, these cloud-native platforms that you have, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, etc., comes with a lot of challenges, and people migrate into something that they're not, they don't really have the knowledge about how to protect themselves. So all of these things combined, this is kind of the top list that I mentioned now, but one thing that you should not forget about is that a lot of research shows that 90% of everything that happens in terms of incidents has a human element as a part of it. So the humans and the users are definitely part of it, and obviously still with AR and everything, and for many years ahead, we still have humans in every system. So yeah, the humans is really the biggest threats, and that's one of the biggest challenges you have, because even if you talk about ransomware attacks, even if you talk about cloud misconfigurations or other things, it all starts with a human mistake or someone that didn't do something, or you didn't invest enough in cybersecurity. So that could also be a human factor.
Sure, that's really interesting. One of my next questions was going to be, what can iGaming companies do to guard themselves against this sort of thing? But Connor, I noticed Katie has brought up the Caesars story in the comments there, stealing your thunder a little bit. So for those that might not be aware, do you want to tell everybody what happened regarding Caesars and sort of the steps they might have taken to avoid a similar scenario to this?
Yeah, so I'll fill you in on the background, and maybe Stefan can provide some of the expertise on what they could have done differently. So I don't think any of this has been officially confirmed. We haven't had a comment from Caesars yet, but we had a piece in Bloomberg earlier this week that suggested that Caesars has already paid a ransom to some hackers on a similar kind of attack. Well, as far as I understand it, when these hackers make a kind of ransomware attack, there are different things they can threaten the target with, and one of them is to steal company and customer data and then threaten to kind of publish that and make it available to everyone. And obviously, that's a huge breach of regulation and also makes the company super vulnerable, I guess. So anyway, as far as we know, according to these sources in Bloomberg, that's pretty much what happened to Caesars. And it's been suggested that they paid tens of millions of dollars. As Katie mentioned, the figure of 30 million. I think that's the figure that's going round. And we should find out soon. There's a regulatory release expected from Caesars on this. But so far, we're not exactly sure. And Stefan, you mentioned social engineering, which is something I found in the Bloomberg article as well and had to look up for myself because I thought that was to do with manipulating populations or something. That's one definition, but the cybersecurity definition is apparently the use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential or personal information that may be used for fraudulent purposes. So things like phishing attacks, as you mentioned. So yes, that goes back to what you said, Stefan, about human error and how all it takes is for you to deceive one person, and all of a sudden these organizations can kind of be blown wide open. So just to put a bit more meat on the bones, apparently that attack was carried out by a group that's known as something very strange. What's it called? Scattered Spider, or UNC 3944. As if spiders weren't frightening enough. Now coming for your cybersecurity. Apparently those hackers breached an external IT vendor to Caesars and used that kind of door to get into Caesars network. Now, Scattered Spider is believed to be comprised of members who are young adults, some as young as 19 years old, residing in the US and the UK. So it just goes to show that sort of age and experience is not necessarily any barrier to criminals who want to operate in this way. As soon as you have the technical know-how, no matter the size of your target, even anybody can be vulnerable. So yes, with that, others, Sky News suggested that the same hacking group was behind the attack on MGM. And other casino operators are considered prime targets for this kind of attack, and they've been warned to stay on high alert. So, Stefan, what do you think about that, and what Caesars and MGM perhaps could have done differently in terms of their approach to cybersecurity to avoid this kind of thing?
Well, it's a very interesting question, of course. If they have in any way potentially avoided this. we touched on it in a number of times now. A lot of these things starts with a human element, right? And a human that makes mistakes. You get infected, you get something into one computer, you have some kind of weakness, vulnerability in other systems, and it can spread. Just as a virus spread, it spreads further into other systems. And basically you have two types, right? Either you lock down the system or you extract data and you take data as ransom, which was something you touched on now, Connor. And I think, without knowing exactly, basically how these organizations approach cybersecurity, I would assume these are big corporations. I would assume that they first of all, they need to follow some compliance, so they have some frameworks in place. And of course, considering the size, they are most likely doing heavy investments in cybersecurity. But if I would take the average, iGaming company or any some similar type of company, I would say that if you look at the top list of the things you should do is definitely you need to implement some kind of security-based culture. That's kind of the foundation. If people don't care about cybersecurity, how would you even be able to become secure enough, depending on the business that you're running? So making sure that you have a culture where security is a focus, where security is always considered, is of course important. And that goes all the way down to the actual users and employees in the organization, which is usually the ones that makes these mistakes, and that's where these attacks start. The other part of it would definitely be to do some kind of risk assessment, right? You need to understand where are your risks, and if you look at MGM, they would most likely pretty soon figure out that most of the business will not be running if we don't have computers running. So do a risk assessment throughout the entire business. Understand where the risks, where are the risks in our business, and what do we need to protect. Without that, it will also be very hard to get started somewhere. On the third place would, of course, be to implement all these basic stuff. But based on experience, it doesn't matter if we have a customer at Holm Security, we have a customer in Europe, US, Africa, Middle East, Asia. It doesn't matter. All of them have the fundamentals in place: firewalls, antivirus, and that stuff. I mean, that's not really the discussion nowadays. What I would say, it's bullet number 3 still, but bullet number 4 would definitely be creating a proactive approach. You need to have some kind of proactive approach to work towards, work against these new threats that you're facing. That could, of course, be a vulnerability management program, or it could be something else. But you need to have a proactive approach. And a part of that proactive approach is obviously also working with the people to kind of build your own human firewall, because otherwise, you can have all the fancy systems in the world. You can invest huge amounts of money in products, which I would assume that a company like MGM has already done. But if you have users that are, you don't have a security culture, you have users that makes mistakes, it doesn't really matter, right? You still have these holes, you still have these loopholes. So that's really the top 4 things I would start with in general.
Yeah, nice. That's super interesting. And I think, in the case of stake, for example, it's probably easier to understand what the hackers hope to obtain by these attacks. Is cryptocurrency, some monetary gains. But something you said to me via email, Stefan, was really interesting in that, what are the alternative reasons for hacking? You said something about destabilizing kind of a society, and I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, there are, if you look at it, if you take a step back and look at it in the big picture, looking at the big picture nowadays, you have basically 2 types of things going on, right? You have the financially driven hacks, the cyber criminals. That could be like with stake, the cryptocurrency. The other one would be the more state-sponsored cyber criminals to create, disturbance, concern in the society in general, to make people worried about things that they should not necessarily be concerned about. So that's the big major things that you see. Obviously, if you look at the iGaming industry, it's more about the money. There's obviously a strong relation between the industry, money, and user data also. So I think that would definitely be the 2 things, the two top priorities to protect is transactions, money, and privacy, data privacy, meaning all the customers that you have. You want to protect their data. It's very sensitive data, obviously. So there are different purposes for doing these things, but you could of course argue that even the state-sponsored cyber criminals are driven by financial reasons or money.
One point that I think is really interesting, I'm thinking about Caesar's response now. Of course, we don't have this officially, but it's been suggested that they chose to pay off the ransom, essentially. And I think you touched on that earlier, Stefan, that a lot of this happens perhaps in a lot of companies and they don't always publicize that fact. Do you think that's very common? Do you think sometimes the cost of the ransom is kind of easier for the companies to deal with than having the kind of outages that we're seeing at MGM? How many of these ransom attackers do you think are getting paid off?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, right? And obviously one of the challenges is that people will never tell you the truth because no one wants to pay them, right? That's I think that's the general opinion, and everyone knows that they shouldn't pay any ransom because that's just feeding them, right? You're putting more money into a crime system that keeps on spinning. So obviously you will never get the correct numbers. You will never get accurate data on this because if you ask, you will not get correct answers. But what we know and what we can suspect is that far more companies than we believe are actually paying these ransoms for these ransomware attacks. And the reason for that is simply that it's less costly. If they do a financial calculation, they will most likely see that paying ransom will cost them less in relation to how it's going to hit their business if, for example, they publicize all their customers that comes available for the public, for example. I mean, that would be way more costly from different perspectives than just paying the ransom. So it's a financial calculation usually that they do, and many times it's easier just to pay them, which is unfortunate, right? Because again, then you're kind of sponsoring the next one that will get hit by the same hacker group or by the same ransomware. So there is no accurate numbers, but it's a lot that pays these ransoms still. What we do know is that if you move into another industry in the government sector, the public sector, it's way less, but that's for other reasons. But on the company side, it's still a lot of companies that pay these ransom because it's simply cheaper and more financial. It's financially better for them to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's probably not until MGM's Q3 report comes out, perhaps, where we see what the full financial impact of these attacks are. As you mentioned earlier, it's not just gaming, it's not just one thing or another, it's kind of operations right across the whole network of resorts that they must be losing a huge amount of money. Not only that, but the shares in the company are down about 4% over the last few days, which with a company of that size is probably tens of millions in market cap. And so who knows, perhaps Caesars has done the cheaper option by actually paying them off again.
They might have got away with a bargain.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that's an approach that you advocate for, though, Stefan. That should be presumably a kind of last case scenario for operators. And like you say, it's pretty much a cost, calculation at the end of the day for these companies. But I was reading somewhere, I think it might have been in the FBI statement, that only 5% of cyber security criminals are actually caught. I don't know how accurate that is, but I mean, again, that kind of one of our questions here was on the role of law enforcement, because the FBI has expressed an obvious interest to investigate the state case, the MGM case, and I suppose that relates also to this sort of state-sponsored thing you're talking about, in that they obviously their primary priority is the American government, and if there's foreign states or whatever trying to sow uncertainty, then that has to be a primary concern for them. Is that why they get involved? Or is it just because it's, a crime like any other?
First of all, I mean, these cyber crimes cause huge financial losses. I mean, if you compare that to some other type of crimes that could cause financial loss for a company, that could be related to, very, very hard punishments, many years in jail if you get convicted for it. So even though it's all in the digital world, we should not forget that these are very, very, very serious crimes that are committed, and it causes huge loss for these companies, a huge financial loss that could be accounted for in millions of dollars. If you put that in another context, we all know that means many years in jail if you get caught for something like that. The complexity, though, in the digital world is unfortunate. I mean, if it's complex to investigate and get someone convicted for a crime in the real world, so to speak, it's even harder in the digital world. All these hacks are very, very complex. It's much easier to hide between layer and layer of computers, networks, etc., and carry out these crimes, which makes it almost impossible, I would say, to find the responsible people. And that's why the numbers that you mentioned, Jake, are pretty accurate. And that's what I hear also. Somewhere around 5% of these of the crimes are, someone is apprehended and convicted and at least apprehended for it. And that's a very low number. And then we should again remember that a lot of these crimes are never reported even. So there's a huge number that we don't even know about. These are the numbers that we are aware of. These are the 5% of the ones that are reported to the police, to the FBI, etc. So it's a very challenging task. Different, of course, it's different from country to country. US might have a bit more resources than other countries, but in general, it's also too many things going on, too few resources trying to figure out, who to apprehend and who is going to be, responsible for one of these hacks. It's a massive amount, and even US FBI don't have the resources to sort all of that out. So they have to prioritize. And then, of course, government hacks, government organizations are the top priority.
And one thing we should never forget, it's usually these security breaches, they are not that obvious. So the people actually, hitting on a specific spot, the first thing they do is keeping each and everything anonymous, right? So these are the smart people. And the first thing they actually do is like, okay, we need to get rid of all our possible tracks. And then they just attack this one. So it's not like a couple of boys and girls being totally drunk and then just decide, okay, we are launching a cyber attack on XYZ. So this is all well planned. And we should never forget that, for example, Stuxnet, when a nuclear plant in Iran was shut down, nobody as of now knows where it actually originated from or where it came from. There are rumors going around, but as already mentioned by Stefan, the first thing you do is leave no traceable marks and then do the attack. It shouldn't be the other way around. And probably these 5% who have been caught did not follow their own kind of hacker guidelines, to put it in this specific way.
If I can comment on that, I think a huge part of the 5% were the people that they had too much pride, so they wanted to show off and show the rest of the world that they hacked something, and that kind of took the upper hand, and they revealed themselves. That's most likely to be a quite big part of the percentage, because the people that does these things, they are highly skilled and they know exactly how to cover the tracks. But sometimes they brag about it, and that's how they get caught.
Exactly. Pride comes before a fall, as they say. But Katie raises quite an interesting point in the comments. She says she doesn't understand why the FBI are investigating Stake, as they have a Curacao license. So she's right to point out that obviously Stake isn't licensed in the US. It's not a US company or anything like that. I think that the FBI's interest comes from the fact that basically the hackers themselves are from North Korea, and it sounds as if they were hacking crypto to basically further state interests, and obviously the US has a very keen interest in North Korea and what those state interests might be. So I think that might be why they got involved in that one. But you might know better, Stefan. I mean, I don't know. I'm speculating there.
No, I think it's a good guess. Some of these hacker groups have even some are official and some are not official. They have connections to different states, and in this case, it seems to be, just as you mentioned, that there is a connection to another state. And in this specific case, they most likely have other interests in investigating this than just looking at it as an isolated incident for a company. So yeah, most likely that's the case, and that's why they're looking into it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, amazing insight today, Stefan. I don't know if we've got any more questions today before we round off there.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to know, if we can just shift gears a bit quickly. Obviously, we've got a land-based companies have been affected by this latest attack, but just generally, Stefan, in your experience, if we think about online gambling and the iGaming sector, how do you think it stacks up against other sectors in terms of cybersecurity? Is it a very proactive industry in that sense? Is it kind of ahead of other industries or behind them? Do you think, what's the level of protection like at the moment in the iGaming sector?
Well, so I tried to do some research about this, and I believe it to be an interesting topic, because we do look at Holm Security, we do look and try to understand different industries and the capabilities they have to protect themselves. From what we can tell, and I think this is the general opinion, and also the statistics show that the iGaming companies are not they're not better and they're not worse than anyone else in terms of protecting themselves. They're pretty much at the average. Of course, there is you can put them into one of the, let's say, categories, which is money transactions and a lot of data, right? The data privacy, which is important. So these companies are usually they have to follow some certain frameworks and regulations. So they have kind of built into the system some kind of resilience in general, which makes them maybe some above average. And then it also comes with size. So the bigger companies, they have more time and resources to invest in cybersecurity. So MGM, for example, I'm pretty sure that they have very competent people, invest a lot of money in cybersecurity. But it still shows that you're not stronger than your weakest link. So this is one of the biggest challenges that you're facing. You can invest tons of money in cybersecurity, but there is still some weak links somewhere. There's going to continue to be weak links, and how do you deal with that? That's another topic for another session, maybe, to discuss that. But yeah, it's they're around average, maybe a bit better than average because of the character of the business. But they, as many others, still have a lot to do. And I think a lot of them are missing is really the security culture that a lot of these big ones, because they push a lot of money into products. They have all these nice products. They have all these protections. But they did forget about the lady or a guy that works in the reception. They forgot about the guy that works in the souvenir shop, or they forgot about someone else. And they're not protected. They have an email address. They have access to systems. And usually that's where it starts. So this is, of course, the challenge. Even if you're a bit above average, how do you make sure that every single corner of your business is protected? How do you make sure that you don't have any weak links? And I don't think that's a question of money, really. It's more a question about culture, really. So I think that's the challenge that they have. But yeah,
amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Stefan. It's been great to meet you. Really informative session there. We got through quite a lot, I think, in that short amount of time. So just before we say goodbye to you, where can people sort of find you online or on social media if they want to?
Yeah, so we're happy to help out, of course. We work with these things, try to prevent things from happening in a more proactive manner, and hopefully that helps can help some of the organizations, some of the companies also in the iGaming industry. No, but just go to holmsecurity.com. Spells exactly the way it sounds. Holm comes from Stockholm, which is where we are located and have the headquarters. So then you know how to spell it, homesecurity.com. So just go there, sign up, and we're happy to talk about how we can help you.
Great stuff. Well, thanks again for joining us today, Stefan. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Stefan. Bye.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Nico, did you learn a lot there?
Yeah, kind of. The thing is, I'm coming from with a banking background, having an investment banking, especially how these systems actually work.
Yeah.
And of course, we can always finger point to as soon as a system actually crashes, but we should never forget that all the big systems, especially if we're talking about established and old businesses, they always come with a legacy. Especially in banking, the underlying system is usually running on host. So the language host, which was invented back in the 1960s and not by IBM, and nobody ever expected something being the underlying of investment banking as of today. The thing is, of course, you have systems from the 1960s, and then you always attach something here, something there, something each and everywhere, and nobody actually sat down and redrew the overall landscape. So it's a mess. It's just a mess. And as said, it's always attached to a legacy. And of course, for new businesses which just started and established themselves a couple of years ago, it's way easier because they don't need to operate with or to deal with different operating systems, Windows, Linux, etc. So I wasn't surprised at all. And as Stefan already and also mentioned, we just know a tip of the iceberg. And if each and every one of us would be well aware of everything and anything which has been hacked within the last 72 hours, I'm pretty sure we would be running around screaming all the time. But lucky us, usually these things have been solved in a quiet way.
Ignorance is bliss. That's what a message for us to go out on.
Exactly. And yeah, Gabriel says cybersecurity is very important, should be prioritized and taken seriously. And I would tend to agree with that after what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. We've just got about 10 minutes left to take us to the full hour. So DraftKings won't thank me for this, but the thumbnail did say DraftKings disastrous decision, and of course that referenced a tweet that it wasn't a tweet, it was a parlay that they put out this week as a promotion, which was in pretty poor taste, we should say, where they basically had to apologize after using the anniversary of 9/11 to promote a New York themed parlay on their sportsbook, a three-legger where basically a victory for the New York Mets, New York Yankees, and New York Jets had boosted odds. I think I'm glad we're running out of time because probably the less said about this, the better. Other than to say, I think it's a lesson in what not to do, and yeah, the social media backlash sort of said it all here, didn't it?
Yeah. Who on earth signed off on this promo deal, Jake? I mean, isn't it just atrocious? Just absolutely ridiculous. And so, tone deaf to the people of New York and people right across the United States and the rest of the world. I don't think anyone was impressed by that at all.
I know you could almost imagine it coming from some sort of unlicensed edgelord style sports book that bet, the kind that was taking bets on that submarine that disappeared, for example. But
yeah,
a New York licensed Boston based US operator, you would think they would know better. Yeah, there's not much more to say, really, is there?
But do we have the advert? Can we show it or?
I don't think we do. I'm afraid, and it's been deleted. Obviously,
yes, it was deleted quite quickly, but it's all over Twitter. It's not difficult to find. Unfortunately, once something is on the internet, let's face it, it's there forever. So you will not
exactly
find it if you want to see it. But
yeah, and you can scan the QR code actually in the top left, and the screenshot of the never forget parlay, as it was called, is in the copy there. And it was the New York State Gaming Commission that described the promotion as reprehensible, as you can see there in the headline.
Yes, that's quite right.
Yes. So any traders watching, please don't follow the example of DraftKings in that respect. All right, gentlemen, great show today. We've done the full hour, which we haven't done in a few weeks, which is nice. Nico, thank you so much for joining us. You'll be able to see our viewers in Barcelona pretty soon, I imagine.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Me and Connor can't make it, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll have to find somewhere else to go and have a pina colada. Same time next week then, gents. Thank you to our sponsors Playson and Hub 88. Thank you for everybody that's taken the time to comment in the comments. It makes a huge difference to each and every stream. Thank you, Connor, and thank you, Nico. See you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Nico.
Bye-bye.
Next week.
They ain't coming close to me. Flow is on atomic, I'm starting fires through poetry. The heart's out, staying loyal, no falling out. And if you step into the court, be ready, we ballin' out, yeah.